Okay, wait. We got a couple of questions, and then we gotta we have so
The
much still to
estate, the
do.
estate grown part, by the way, is also depends on the sake. There's some most brewers have to purchase the rice from farmers.
Right.
There's up until 20 some years ago, it was illegal for sake breweries to own their own rice fields and to use that because they wanted to build the market for the farmers and protect the farmers so that the sake brewery wouldn't own all the land and own everything. So nowadays, there's very few breweries that actually own their own rice fields. But what they do is they hire the
Right.
farmers to grow the rice for them. They buy the rice from those farmers. Then in the wintertime, when they're not growing rice, those farmers go out and help them brew the sake together so that the experts of the rice are with the sake, with the rice and making the sake year round. It's a very smart business practice.
Well, and that actually helps kind of answer a question that I got earlier from my new friend Akiko, and she had asked me, "You are one of the most global tasters of wonderful drinks. What is special about Japanese sake to you personally?" And talking about that relationship with the farmers and the rice farmers and the brewers, it was pretty cool to see. I went to harvest on a rice farm with Kenbishi's rice. Yamada Nishiki is why I was there. And then, you know, they all laughed at me because I wanted to do a hand harvest, which was fascinating, especially considering how many things Japanese still do by hand. But for me, there was this interesting connection both to the land and where it was growing, right? I love to be able, that's my whole purpose of the show, is tracing where food actually comes from. So I could see the rice, I held it, I helped harvest it. And then, I'm there in October of 2018 or 2019. And I'm like, okay, guys, the harvest is done. Let's go. And they're like, well, you need to come back in the winter. So I went back in February because they said this is how we've always done it. We wait until the temperatures outside are cold enough when we do our sake brewing, and that is part of this history and culture, which was really astounding to me. And I have such a reverence and connection and respect for that history. And I'd like to, Monica, you want to talk a little bit about? I know Marcus and Monica, you can both sort of take over with each other on the significance of history in Japanese sake brewing.
First, it's probably important to say that what sake was and it was in Japan and what is sake today is very different. Japan was a poor country until after World War II, and so now Japan is this country that eats all of this rice. But Japanese people consumed more potatoes back in the day, and so rice was a luxury. And the sakes that were made had a lot of added alcohol, and during different eras of Japanese history, the flavor profile changed, but it's always been something very sacred, something that is very ceremonially consumed, and very much part of the culture and hospitality in Japan. Um, it wasn't always a prestigious thing to be a sake brewer. And that's why how my grandfather ended up working at a sake brewery when he was discharged from World War II. Nobody else would hire him. So it's been a humble trade for a long time. And sake brewers, Marcus always calls them rock stars, and they are, but they're not treated like royalty in Japan. It's a very like humble trade, and which is it's great, and that's what I think really makes all of us want to do what we do, because it's an honor to be cheerleaders for these people who refuse to promote themselves, and they're so humble, and they're not above doing any
Yeah.
kind of manual labor.
But these are all family owned breweries, all of them with histories of 2, 3, 4, 500 years going back.
We're going to take a little detour then to focus on the food pairings and what sake does with food. So I've sent some sake kits to some friends and to see what they could come up with outside of just having sake with sushi. So let's go over to Instagram and see my buddy Carlo's dish. Carlo has the chef in Portland called Magna, Filipino chef. I filmed with him a few times. He's a good friend. I'm sure he made something delicious.
All right, Kelly. Thanks for the sake. Um, since we have some time on our hands, we decided to go a little fancy for our pairings. We actually made a scallop Wellington. So that's a scallop with sweet potato, layers in between each scallop slice, with pickled shimeji mushrooms, some charred red onion. There's also a mushroom adobo duxelle inside the Wellington itself. Yeah, so we're going to cut into this bad boy. I just want to put it on the plate so you can see it. Wish me.
I think that was a wish me luck before he cut off. Julia, any thoughts? Any thoughts on that dish?
Scallop Wellington is a really interesting dish. I never would have thought of that. It's a lot of fun because I'm thinking about pairings. I think about texture a lot, and for me, a scallop is a very cool element because it can be very silky and smooth in a sense, but when it's seared, you have this amazing crust on it. And I'm thinking about a Wellington. Well, then you're starting to get this flaky, almost brioche, buttery note and tone, and I think that would go really, really well with junmai, but something with a lot of almost lactic acid going on. I think something a little bit rich and round, but with a hint of that tang, I think would be really, really lovely. Yeah, I want to try the dish. It's beautiful.
Carla, we've got a little bit of a sign off here for you, bud. I don't think Mallory Martin sent ours, but let's see. We've got Nati and Maria, my friends, also in Portland, Puerto Rican chef. She really geeked out on this one. I'm really upset I'm not there to eat it. Carne frita, fried pork with a spiced tamarind ahi glaze. She had a simp of the junmai. I knew I had to make some carne frita. I feel like she broke out the sous vide on this one. That's her house. Okay, so she went with Marcus, tell us about that sake there's something really, I think, is special about that sake, or interesting.
I'm not seeing which sake.
It's the Kiku Masumane, the one from the cedar.
Oh, the Totozake. Yeah. Totozake is a very traditional. Long time ago, all sake was brewed in cedar and aged in cedar. Nowadays, you don't use it, except that Kikumasamune are the world's leaders in making and holding on to that tradition of cedar aged sake. So they make the sake. They hand make the sake barrel, the storage barrels with craftspeople that are experts in hand making these barrels with no glue, no nails. It's all just weaving, handmade together.
Yeah.
And then pour the brewed sake in the barrel for a certain amount of time, and then they bottle it. And so the sake will have a beautiful, just nice cedar aromatic as well as flavor to it. Kiko Masamune just does a phenomenal job of making cedar aged sake, which is really cool. As Americans, we think, oh, you age the wine in oak. And so the concept is not foreign to us.